Geoffrey, would you have advised Bruce Lehrmann to go to trial on this?
Absolutely not. I would have told him not to do it.
Because
I think it's mad. I think it's mad. Things can go wrong. Trials can go in directions no one can guess. And with Mr. Lehrmann facing criminal charges and a potential trial in another state, good golly, I would have told him, don't go anywhere near it.
I'd like your feedback on this. When we get a man who is being accused of sexual assault and protests his innocence, we say you need to go public straight away, and you need to go public until you've exhausted your opportunities to go public. In the case of a woman, we advise to be very cautious about going public, because what happens in a rape trial is appalling for women. And so they need to be very careful about what they say and their reputation outside the courthouse. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, your advice is correct. I like to think of it notionally in terms of the advice that I would give to my own children. I've got sons, I don't have daughters. But if I had daughters, I would tell them to go nowhere near the judicial system as a way of seeking justice or any redress in terms of sexual assault, because the whole system is unbalanced and in favour, I'm afraid, of males.
And the advice to your sons?
My sons,
again, we're always assuming that the person's innocent and is able to protest, in the case of a male, his innocence.
I would tell them to come out strongly, immediately, to protest their innocence and to make it clear why they say that and why the allegation is wrong. But I will say this, it does again reflect the imbalance in the system. It's slanted.
My logic is this: when you're communicating through the media or through whatever channel you are, not in a courtroom, you're really trying to simulate a one-on-one conversation over a dinner table. So if you're in somebody's lounge room on TV, you're actually talking to them, whether there are 200,000 people watching or whether there's just 20 people. And so the conversation needs to be that way. I didn't do it, or this is what happened, and this is why it's being interpreted or misinterpreted, and so on. That's the communication skill. The courtroom is for these kinds of cases, has always struck me as a very hostile environment.
Not only hostile, but also weirdly out of place in determining the truth. I mean, anybody who thinks that court proceedings get at the truth does not understand that the adversarial system has two sides. This side is trying to put forward their story, but not only that, prevent the other side's story coming out, and vice versa. And so the problem is that it's the worst possible environment for getting at the truth, and the worst possible environment for having the opportunity to explain yourself, because it's question and answer and limited scope of the questioning and answering.
Which brings me to the other thing that I'm interested in your view. I often read the media reports, and on the very rare occasions that I go to court, I hear a different interpretation entirely. And I just wonder if the judge, so we read the media report, is the judge listening to the same evidence, but interpreting it in the same way?
Of course not. There's never been a perfect judge. There's never been a perfect journalist. Have you ever watched football with a friend who is supporting the opposite team to you, and each of you's got a completely different interpretation on what happened in the scrum? Now, it's exactly the same thing, that you've got a judge who's hearing one thing or interpreting it one way, parties who are trying to present it one way or the other, and journalists who are then third parties. And from that, you'd even get, in some cases, not the Lehrmann case, but in some cases, the greater complexity of presenting that to a jury of 4, 6, or 12 people. It's hard. So where does the truth come into all of that? Probably fits in only by accident, if it ever does.
But having said that, how accurate, given what you've just said, how much can we rely on the accuracy of the judgment?
All I can say is, and I know this judge personally, that it will be an earnest and honest attempt to arrive at what this judge thinks is the truth and what is accurate. But of course, it's an imperfect model, and it's just working from factors which are designed in some ways to prevent consideration of some of the most relevant angles.
Right.
So, for example, the judge in this case will be able to pay little or no attention to the fact that, unfortunately, Mr. Lehrmann has had allegations made against him separately in Queensland. Now, a lot of people would regard that fact as highly relevant.
All right. Now, the other journalist dilemma here is Brittany Higgins went to Lisa Wilkinson at Channel 10 with her story before going to the police. Now, that happens a lot. And when I was a journalist, it happened a lot, particularly 60 Minutes. People had come to us and then we'd recognise that there was the potential for a crime, and we'd run the story and then take it to, and then go to the police after the story. What do you think of what happened with the interview or the pre-interview, the recorded pre-interview that Lisa Wilkinson and her producer did with Brittany Higgins and that process?
You know, this is just an awful thing. We all know from events of tragedy in our own families that your brothers and sisters may react differently to the death of a parent than you do. Everybody's different. Everybody reacts a different way. Look, if I was going to say something right now, I think it's an imperfect solution to your problems to go to the press before you go to the police. But who am I to say? I haven't been in this awful position, and I'm not ready to pass judgment on other people as to why they do things. May I say this, Peter? I've got to tell you right now, I've done a bit of work in the ACT over the years, and the local police have got the most unenviable reputation. And that could have been operating on the mind of Ms. Higgins when she did what she did. Am I in a position to second guess her or make a judgment about it? No, I'm not.
And are you in a position to second guess Channel 10's behaviour in encouraging her to do a story before she went to the police?
There's somebody coming forward with a story like this is like throwing a bucket of blood into little sharks. I'm sorry. That's their business. That's what they do. And no doubt Ms. Higgins thought she may go there and get a sympathetic hearing and also have her story told to a wider group than might ever receive it if she went to the ACT police. But I've got to say this, that I don't, again, grudge journalists for doing their job, which is telling a good story of public interest, which it undoubtedly was.
Geoffrey Watson, thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.